Hello and welcome back to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith is Smoking on the message boards, joined by the best host that money can buy, but which we don't currently possess. Wil Masisak, you know as Bradshaw to Ben, and Korey Karbowsky, you know as Core 39. Well, gentlemen, unfortunately, we went through our 3 game skid of our toughest schedule and we didn't win a single one. Just
And
like
I, I know someone said in September they weren't going to win any of those games, but
no, who's
called
that?
me crazy.
Who's that?
All right, Jeremy.
But yeah, boy, what a disappointing way to play a game on Christmas this year. Good Lord. Like I didn't think we were gonna win. I didn't think we were gonna look that bad. But yeah, it was just atrocious for like 60 minutes of football. Well, maybe not 60, but probably 50. Yeah, just very disappointing. You know, we put the ball on the turf several times through another interception that I don't know where Russell was putting that ball. It wasn't even near Freiermuth down the middle. But yeah, just disappointing overall. And then defensively, boy, it doesn't look like we have an answer on defense right now. And we'll get to that here in a second. But what are your guys' thoughts on this game, Corey? Let's start with you.
I think the big takeaway for me is I talked to both you guys about this, I think, but like Russell Wilson, like how people describe Ben and not having the arm strength and all that stuff towards the end of his career, which I mean, it wasn't what it was. That's what Russell Wilson looks like, but worse. Like it just looks like he has no drive behind the ball. He can't get anything behind it. It's it's really apparent on some of those like short little dump offs where like when you can tell when he's not throwing hard, it's just like it's a duck. Like he's just that thing's floating in the air. Then even when he's trying to laser something through, like the Pat throw, which was a horrible throw, even if it was Patrick Mahomes throwing it, like there's just no oomph behind the ball. So
Yeah.
sure we'll touch on the future, topic of this in a little bit, but it's almost best if it just keeps cratering. So we're like, okay, this isn't the answer, and we can move past it because right now it just doesn't look like we can roll into next year, let alone playoffs with what he's doing right now. He just doesn't have the arm talent anymore. So that's kind of my big takeaway is just how slow every ball he threw looked.
Gotcha. Will, what are your thoughts after this past catastrophe?
Hey, by the way, that Russell Wilson interception reminded me of I was trying to remember his name. I was actually just trying to look it up. It was a kicker for North Carolina who went to the Arena League, and he was like, I'll be generous, 5'6", maybe. And he said that he was in the Arena League his first game. The starting quarterback got hurt, and the backup quarterback got hurt. And of course, Arena League, very small rosters. And they were like, you're next up at quarterback. And he's like, what are you talking about? He said, well, you played quarterback in high school, right? He's like, yeah, a long time ago. And, like whatever. So he goes in, they're just like explaining some basic plays to him, but so the first pass play, he said it's like all these huge dudes are coming at him. He can't see shit. He has no idea what to do. And he was like, I think there's a receiver somewhere down there on the right. And he said, I just like heaved it as far as I could heave it down the right sideline, and it falls right in the guy's lap. It's a touchdown. The coach is like, dude, you're amazing. And he's like, I have no idea what I just did. I think that's Russell Wilson's throw to Pat Freiermuth looked like that. It's like there's a couple of guys in my face. I can't really see anything in the middle of the field. So I'm just gonna like toss it somewhere where theoretically there might be a tight end. So yeah, I feel like that was one of the big knocks on Russ Wilson is that he can't see the middle of the field very well over the course of his career unless he steps up and makes room for himself in the pocket. So more or less a timing throw when he runs out of time to the middle of the field, I think is going to be a crapshoot. And that's just, he's got plenty of good qualities. That's not one of them. As far as the skid, it was kind of predictable, but I feel like, my former band teacher, going back in history again for another story, but a quick one. He always used to say that it's not about how good your best people are. The weakest link will always be the piece of the chain that fails. And I feel like that's especially true with defense, and especially true in pass coverage, and especially true when you got even one guy who's not on the same page with everybody else. Suddenly it's like that guy, blows coverages or does something you don't expect him to do. Or even worse, you find a better players trying to cover for him, and then they start doing stupid stuff. And I think you can see the chain of events like that. And I'm sure that's probably the next thing you were going to talk about, Jeremy. I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I was very say since we're on this topic, it's been said, after the Chiefs game, that not all of us are on the same page. We're not, so someone's trying to play hero ball on defense. I'm paraphrasing here, but I mean, to me, I wasn't really looking for who that was. Do you guys have an idea of who that is? Who's not on the page and everything? Who? Let us know. Well, who are we talking
I know,
about?
Korey, do you watch all 22 at all?
I haven't, but I don't really don't have a guess. I feel like there might be a couple people,
Yeah,
but
it's multiple people, and like I said, it's kind of what I just described. I feel like the easy target is Cam Sutton. Since Cam Sutton has come in and played more snaps. In fact, Beanie Bishop didn't play any defensive snaps this on Christmas Day, which is mind blowing to me. Because I felt like he's been pretty solid all year. His main issue's been, and to be fair, this is something that with Hollywood Brown and the kid from Texas,
Worthy. Yep.
yeah, with those two guys playing in the slot, you're going to see a lot of slot fades against Beanie Bishop. So I'm sure that was part of the reason they didn't play him much in this game. But yeah, I think Cam Sutton, there's a couple of examples that are glaring examples where he just obviously lets a guy go. The Travis Kelsey touchdown where he was wide open is an example of that. But I think Minka also appears to be trying to, when he's not playing 30 yards off the ball, I think he's trying to cover for the fact that he's not sure that the guys on his left and right are going to make the plays they need to make. And that feels like it's a temptation when you're a leader, but it's a really tough thing to do on the defense. If you're going to do that, then you got to make the play, if you're scrambling around, you got to figure out ways to, guess right and make the play. Yeah, and I feel like there's multiple examples where Minka missed blue coverages and multiple examples of Cam Sutton and even a couple others, Patrick Queen, Kazee. It looked like it's just an infection that once it starts going around, it's a little like fumbling. Once you start fumbling, it feels like both sides, they just want to fumble the ball. Like maybe it's because guys are actively trying to strip it or whatever. But yeah, in this case, I feel like it's a contagion that there isn't an easy solution for. It's like I don't know. You guys, Korey, talk about this part. What about the blandness of the scheme and the fact that they play this cover three with a deep, deep safety so much? Because I feel like that puts a lot of pressure on your red zone.
well, not that's what they're committed to, and they want to stop the run, and they think they have the dudes on the outside, but that's one of those things where it just really lacks creativity just because you can run all this kind of stuff out of too high. Like you can roll into cover threes, you can cloud off it. Like there's so much stuff that you can do. You can stagger the safeties to be in this kind of pseudo one high look, but where you could end up falling into a cover four because you're not too far off the ball. And it's just kind of mind boggling that they just go and they sit in this very stock look where it just makes your defense predictable. It's any decent OC is going to be able to get their stuff off on it. It's if you can pull it off and you have the guys at every level, it can work, but that goes for any defensive coverage. Like if you have the dudes in the front seven to go too high and not have to keep that safety down in the box for the run fit, then that's going to look great too. So it's more of a you can. And then what really makes something good, like when it's something elite, is when you have the dudes and you have the tactics and the coaching on the back end to now not only are you facing elite guys, but you don't know where they're going to be, you don't know what they're in, it's not predictable, and it just feels like even if we have some dudes on defense which haven't played up to their level this year, that you're just leaving a lot of meat on the bone by not attempting to disguise stuff and move around more and throw different coverage looks at people. So it's just kind of mind-boggling, to be honest, that's how far we've fallen from kind of the Dick LeBeau exotic, make them look at everything and blitz from everywhere and all this, and it's just line up and cover three, one high safety, and just roll.
I
Man,
would hire Dick LeBeau back now, for Christ's sakes.
he
Like,
looks
get
pretty
him
good
back
too.
in the building.
He could probably play, in the secondary for better than some of the guys. I watched that Atlanta Minnesota game that was a night game. I think it was Monday night, right?
Yeah.
And what both defenses were doing, the calls and like what they were executing was like it just jumped out to me how vanilla the Steelers defense actually is. And I think part of that is they've struggled so much with checks at the line. So they make a play call and then the team shifts formations or they go in motion or whatever, and then there's a check by the defense that's out of their regular call. And I would say the elite defenses still check into something that is basically, has a lot of moving parts to it that they execute. But if you're struggling at those checks, then you probably make it, your tendency would be to say, well, let's make it super simple. If the guy goes in motion, then we're just going to zone it across and just like, no, but just stay in your lane or whatever it is they say, or the man coverage. If the guy goes in motion, you take the inside guy, you got number two and you got one, no matter what they do. But that isn't necessarily the way to defend an NFL offense. To defend a high school offense or like on Sunday mornings in flag football, yeah, sure. But for Patrick Mahomes, first of all, if you run the same base defense over and over again, the quarterbacks and coordinators know immediately, even the receivers, they know, oh, the hole in this defense is this area. And if it's not there right away, then, I'll depend on my quarterback to like buy some time, make a play, whatever. But it's all, it's like great quarterbacks don't miss open guys. So if you blow a coverage, they're not missing it. And they know how to attack whatever shell you give them if you don't disguise it. And they know before the ball's even snapped, where they're going. It's very hard to stop.
Yeah, and the Chiefs are that offense that, they're arguably the best offense
I
in the
just want to
NFL.
add.
So go ahead, Corey.
Nope. He froze though.
Mhm.
He
There
must have
was
been
some
saying something
debate
important. Oh yeah, there you go.
in the off season, and I'll ask you two this: if you could, is it good? Can you hear me?
It's still frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just going to pose this question to the two of you. I know there was some debate about, should we keep Brian Flores or, should we fire Terrell Austin? And no one really knew how much, stake each of them had in the defense. If you could go back into the offseason, what would your decision be on that?
Well, obviously keep Flores.
I mean, the discussion was we didn't keep Flores because he doesn't run the same scheme that Mike Tomlin likes to run. Well, and we have the players for that. Well, if you look at the evidence, it's like I'm not sure we do have the players for it, and I'm not sure it's a very good scheme. So that is a sort of a self-answering question. I don't think as long as if it's true, I don't know that's true. If it's true that Mike Tomlin exerts his will on what the offense and defense does, I would have to assume that's true. It seems like it's been the same, on offense and defense with some rearranging of the deck chairs. It's been the same for his entire tenure, right? So, or at least for the last 10, 12 years. So if that's the case, it doesn't matter who the defensive coordinator is.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's the truth, but it's a bleak way to look at it.
I mean, if you inherit Dick LeBeau and Bruce Arians, you have a little less leverage to try to change anything that they're doing because you're like, well, you guys know, I trust you. You guys know what you're doing. But yeah, once we moved on from having this like experienced coordinators to everything that happened since then, yeah, it's been rough. I don't feel like we have any kind of scheme or and as he would say, the schematics. That doesn't really seem to be. Hate to go by Hard Knocks, but if you watch Hard Knocks, I don't see that coach. He does a lot of great things, and he gets, he knows how to get in like the head of people and get them on the page and whatever. But you don't see him talking about schematics a lot at all.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. And I'll throw this in there since we're kind of talking about, how we would love to kind of restart from the coaching perspective. I've, excuse me, I'm here in Indy, so I have quite a few friends that are Colts fans. And a buddy of mine, he was going off on the Colts, because the Colts are just, bad. Pat McAfee went off on them. It's a big story here in Indy right now. And, he's going off on this tangent. And I was like, yeah, I'll still trade you Mike Tomlin for Shane Steichen. It's like at least Steichen knows how to like scheme people open on offense and like actually like try to run a modern NFL offense and at least be aggressive and stuff. And he was just like, really? Why would you say that? And I was like, because we don't do anything X's and O's wise in Pittsburgh at all. It's the most vanilla ass shit you could possibly think of. And that's our offense. So I don't know about you guys or whatever. It's more of a joke than anything. I don't know if Shane
But
Steichen.
it's like I think if you think if guys just like stay together, play passionately, play hard, and execute, will win. That's football 101. But
Mm-hmm.
is that what really works at the NFL level now? Hard to say. I mean,
Yeah, I
maybe
don't.
to a degree, if they'd be Indianapolis would be happy with that trade because they'd be in, contention for the playoffs every year. Uh,
Right.
so that would, if you're an Indy fan, like that's not bad.
Yeah. But
I
yeah,
think
unfortunately, I'm not sure Tomlin's teaching any 200 or 300 level courses Pittsburgh right now. Corey, sounded like you were going to chime in there.
yeah, there's just it's a risk that at this point, I think at least all of us are kind of willing to take where, yeah, a new coach might usher in a bit of a dark days, a dark era, but it comes from a place of privilege. But you get tired of winning every season but never doing anything in the playoffs. I'm sure there are teams that if the Browns could guarantee our last 10 years, they're doing it in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
When you're at the end of those 10 years, you're sitting there like, we can't win a damn playoff game. Like, it's the same thing over and over again. We're not challenging any of the elite teams. I mean, and I'm the big Ravens, Steelers whoop the Ravens ass guy. So, I will scratch that from this discussion. What elite team have we beaten in the last 6 years? We beat the Bills in week 2 years ago, or
Yeah,
what
week
else?
one. Yeah.
What is there anything else outside of that you can think of off the top of your head that
I mean,
we
other than owning Lamar Jackson and the Ravens,
where Lamar, in all honesty, hasn't played half those games either.
yeah. But,
Not in
yeah.
not in recent years anyway. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's I think a lot of Steelers fans, especially if we lose this year in first round, which is kind of looking like we're on a fast track to, it's you get tired of mediocrity, which is really what this is. It's barely winning football in the regular season and then getting blown out in the postseason.
I mean, if they go to Houston, let's say they beat Cincinnati this weekend and they go to Houston and they win and then lose the following weekend, the way they've always lost to better teams in the playoffs lately. Is that a successful season?
No, I don't. I don't. You didn't beat one elite team other than when you beat the Ravens earlier in the year, and that's it's division rival.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you beat Commandos, the Commanders. You beat them, and they're a decent team. They're a pretty good team. But yeah, it's like in Cincinnati, had its problems back when they beat Cincinnati, but that was actually good thing they won that game because if they didn't, they'd be playing for their playoff lives on
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yeah.
But those are two. That would be like the two of the three best wins they had this year. Seems like a long, long time ago. I mean, to answer my own question, I think it doesn't feel like a success for the season, and here's why. You had a chance, first of all, you had a good enough record that if you had built on the momentum and use the opportunity to not have George Pickens to try to open up the offense and do something with the other guys. You've got to, made improvements on defense rather than playing the same vanilla thing. Like if there had been some kind of progression in development that made you feel like, all right, they're on an upward trajectory, and then even if they lose in the second round, they won a playoff game and they're on a trajectory to be better next year. But here's the thing. We don't even know that, they have no quarterbacks that we know for sure are coming back next year. So even if your quarterback wins a playoff game for you by playing out of his mind, maybe that means that someone else would be more interested in signing him, and maybe he would be more interested in going somewhere else. Who knows? Your defense seems to be getting worse, not better, and they're already the highest paid defense. So it's like, what are you going to spend more money on your defense to try to get it corrected? Other than George Pickens, who may or may not get renewed in his contract, like who do they really have on offense that you're just like, I mean, I guess you got a couple linemen that feel like you're building something on the O line, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't see this progression. If they had a young quarterback and this was their first time making the playoffs in a while and they did better and they looked better in the playoffs and more competitive even in the game that they lost, then you feel like, okay, we're going to make these changes, we're going to add these things, and next year, is our year. But I don't understand being at this point we've succumbed to the mediocrity if we're just going to be like, okay, well, they made the playoffs, great. They won a game in the playoffs against the worst team with it playing at home on the first weekend. Great. They got blown out again. All right, well, welcome to next year. It's going to be the same as this year. That's what it feels like.
I don't know if they beat the Texans.
That's a big assumption, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they do. That's not a game where right now I'm just like, oh, win, move on.
I'm not sure any of the teams that are still alive for the playoffs would be an easy win for the Steelers. Maybe Miami at home, which they're not going to get. But if saying that would be like, if they played at home against Miami, I'd feel pretty good about that. But otherwise, Denver's playing a lot better than it has. And the Chargers are going to be a lot healthier than they were the last time I saw the Steelers. So, yeah, I don't know that there's a good matchup for them out there.
Yeah. So since we're kind of talking about playoff scenarios here, I bookmarked this, a day ago, kind of a little bit of a rabbit hole. Not totally certain about the validity on this or whatever, but there's a case that if Pittsburgh were to not win this game against Cincinnati, it would actually be best case scenario because they would avoid the Chiefs and Bengals until the AFC Championship game.
Nah, that's not true.
No. All right. We'll throw it out the window. Don't believe me.
If they are the lowest seed that wins the first weekend,
Mm-hmm.
go to Kansas City.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, I think the thing was if Cincinnati gets in as the 7 seed.
Oh, if Cincinnati beats Buffalo, then yeah, you're going to avoid the Chiefs. But
yeah. But anyway,
fair enough. I mean, the thing is, unfortunately for Cincinnati, they've been playing really well, pretty good football the last month or so. And I wouldn't rule it out that if they sneaked into the playoffs, they'd be able to win a playoff game.
yeah.
But that Denver having to lose to Kansas City, that is going to be resting everybody and starting Carson Wentz and whatever, that's a tough ask.
Yeah, I agree.
The other parts of it, I totally could see happening. But
Well, since we're kind of talking about the Bengals, let's kind of shift our focus to the game this week. Notably on the injury report for the Bengals, Chase Brown did not practice yesterday. He left the game over Denver with an ankle injury, kind of a weird little ankle thing. I think it's just an ankle sprain, so there's a chance he comes back for this game. My guess is he'll at least give it a go, considering what's on the line for Cincinnati this week. Other than that, Sam Hubbard did not practice. Let's see here. Andrew.
I think Sam Hubbard he said that he is hoping if they make it to the Super Bowl that he would be able to play.
I was about to say, I know he had that as like a PCL injury or something like that on his touchdown.
Hurt himself on his touchdown catch.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, the grass is not always greener on the other side, Sam. You may have gotten a touchdown on your record, but cost you several games potentially. Other than that, Cincinnati's relatively healthy, mostly light and full practices. Nice part is for the Steelers, it looks like Joey Porter Jr. Had a full practice yesterday, so it looks like he's going to be back for this game, which is huge. You can tell we've really missed him out there. James, us having to play James Pierre is pretty telling. Let's put it that way. He's not bad, but shit, you don't want him out there.
He just always his way on the field towards the end of the season, which credit to him. a testament to what he's done in the league, but it's for a playoff contender, not really what you want for
But
four straight
there are
seasons.
worse cornerback 5, 6 in the league. You know what I mean? It's just to put him in a position where he's got to play against good offenses and good receivers that's disservice to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's just nice, good guy in special teams.
Yeah, yeah. But so injury report for the Steeler wise, other than Joey Porter Jr., everyone practiced outside of Isaac Seumalo, just typical veteran rest day, and it's weird. So Russell Wilson got a light practice designation, but the injury was resting vet, just like the Seumalo. So it's weird because I read that Justin Fields took all the first team reps yesterday. So I don't know which is true, but
Well, wait, I'm going to ask you a question about that. Don't let me forget. But I just want to know, did Cole Holcomb actually do a full practice? That's what it said on Twitter. I don't know if that's
light
true.
practice according to
Yeah.
the Steelers.
Yeah, limited. But my question was going to be, would your mind be completely blown if Justin Fields comes out as the starter on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean mine would.
Starter, yes. I can see a world where if everything's falling apart for Russ, like 2 turnovers in the first quarter and a half, I could see that being a switch. But starting, I would be mind blown.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say I'd be mind blown, but I put that a percentage over 0. You know what I mean? Like I'd say it is not impossible, especially in light of the fact that he took first team reps and it's like
Mhm.
maybe if the team, it's all about the team. I feel like if the vibe on the team is, if we just hadn't turned the ball over the last 2 games, we would have won. We were in those games until the end, until Russ turned it over. Then maybe, and it's like, what a world when we think Justin Fields is the guy that protects the football better. Justin Fields with his 30 fumbles in 3 seasons. But yeah, I'm just curious. I feel like there's a little bit of the tiniest bit of intrigue, and as Korey said, I would expect at the very least a short hook,
So,
a short leash rather for Russell Wilson, which is I don't think it's really about his fault, but I understand the way they look at it. If you feel like turnovers, protecting the ball is the main thing you have to do to win, rather than put guys in position to like get open, make things easier for your quarterback, try to get him out of this slump, whatever you want to call it. But they don't really look at that way. They're just like, they don't view turnovers as being random, and they feel like that's, we have to go get more turnovers and we have to quit turning it over. It's like, well, you can keep saying that as long as you want, but there's a lot of layers to that. If you don't make any throws that have a challenging element to them, you're probably never going to throw an interception, but
mhm.
it costs you a certain thing. If ball's on the ground and we don't get it, if we're making the effort, it's maybe just the ball doesn't bounce our way. It's not like you're coaching anybody a way to get the ball. The way we have to get the ball is everybody has to run to the tackle, even when you don't think you're involved. Run to the ball. If they were given like specific example instruction like that, I'd feel like maybe you could change it, but I don't know. We're not playing the kind of defense or offense that is going to be conducive to winning the turnover battle a lot, at least on a defense.
No, and you mentioned that it's kind of crazy how unfortunate the ball has bounced these last 2 to 3 weeks. Like we're forcing fumbles, but boy, we are just missing them and not getting on them. Like we forced 2 on punt returns or kick returns. I can't remember which ones they were, where we have been right there, but someone dives in just ahead. And this Patrick Queen should have had a pick this past week. I'm convinced I could have caught that ball. I'm just saying. It's like the thing was a freaking duck falling from heaven. Like we're just missing opportunities that this team typically does not miss. So like the ball is just not bouncing in our favor right now. On top of not playing good football, on top of that, but you mentioned something about Russell Wilson being the problem. Do you feel like the team thinks Russell Wilson is the problem? Like the issue? You were talking about the quick hook with Justin Fields and everything. Do you think that the team is thinking, oh, if only Russell wouldn't have turned the ball over these last few weeks, we would have won games?
I mean, by the way, I'm only going to say one thing about this. I'm going to leave it to Corey to answer your
Okay.
question. Reversion to the mean. The Steelers were getting like every bounce, every lucky, every for the first half of the season. So this is just, I mean, even last year there was some Kenny Pickett stuff that was like, oh my God, like the luckiest fortunate thing happened that bailed out an otherwise terrible game. And I just feel like it's just this stuff is random. It goes in cycles like this. You have to be able to overcome that with being better prepared, so that whenever something bad happens, as long as it doesn't happen on the last play of the game, you always feel like you got a chance to overcome that. That's why I don't worry too much about like an interception in the first quarter because I
Mhm.
feel like, oh, okay, you're trying to push the ball and you made a mistake and you saw something that you hadn't seen on tape or whatever. You learn from it and then you overcome it later because you're a good player. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's random reversion to the mean.
Yeah. Corey.
So I'll say from the perspective of being in the locker room, how these things usually go is usually when there's blame being thrown around, it's almost always from the receivers. So it's not the O line, it's not the running backs. Now there's two culprits usually. There's the quarterback and there's the OC. There's the OC if they're not getting targets, and then there's the quarterback if it's bad balls and they're not just not catchable balls, all that stuff. I don't think there's much blame going around simply because they brought in receivers who are not going to care about their targets. So, like Van Jefferson is not going to be complaining about his targets. Ben Skowronek is not going to be complaining about his targets. Scotty Miller, not going to be complaining about his targets. Mike Williams could have been that guy a couple of years ago, but it's clear like he knew coming into this situation that he was not going to be getting a ton of targets. So maybe Pickens is, mad at Russ. I could see that being the case.
I,
But
I
and
think
then no
George is mad. George is mad at everything and everybody. Sorry, Corey.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no one on the defense is going to be blaming Russ because they've given up 30 bombs the last 2 weeks. So they can't say anything. So it's really just George Pickens. And if George Pickens is mad at you, it's like like Will was just saying, it's not really anything newsworthy. So I don't think Russ is getting blamed from now. Maybe he should be, but at least the receivers that they brought into that room are not going to be, Stephon Diggs, complaining about not getting their targets and all that. They brought in lunch pail blocking receivers who expect 1 to 2 targets a game, and that's what they're getting. So no one's going to say anything.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting enough, Stephon Diggs will be a free agent this offseason. No.
Well, this raises the issue. What what great wide receiver would come to Pittsburgh? Like Corey's
Yeah.
just laid the case out for why they're not going to come. The guy
Yeah.
that's going to come would be somebody who's like a lunch pail guy. Like if Amon St. Rob wasn't playing for a great team right now, let's say he was that same cat, but he was playing for I don't know, I'm
Cleveland.
not even Atlanta. I think it's Jacksonville. Like he was playing for somebody that it just didn't feel like it was really going to work out to be a winning team. I could see a guy like that coming, but you're like that's such a I don't know. Tell me who there is in the league who is an underrated wide receiver who loves blocking and doesn't mind not getting targets, who would come as a high price free agent to play for the Steelers. Like,
Yeah.
Pickens actually used to love blocking, and then we didn't get him the ball for a full year, and that kind of
Yeah,
has,
that shredded that.
yeah.
and told him it was his fault.
Right.
what when are we? What round are we taking Ricky White in from UNLV?
I
Oof.
mean, I dream come true. I think Ricky Wright might be the most disrespected wide receiver in the class, and I feel like he's Steeler through and through because
He screams Steeler, doesn't he? He just screams.
special team stud. So right away when he comes in as a rookie, he's gonna make the coaches happy. That way, um, blocks his ass off. Is not just a big target, which they seem to like, especially as blockers on the outside, but is a refined route runner for someone who's in college. Like if he played anywhere remotely close to, you know, where people see college football players play, he'd be very highly regarded. But yeah, I think he plays west of the Mississippi. And he does not play for a Power Four school, and he was not a four-star recruit. So
I'll tell you what though, they did take Mason McCormick. I feel like that's something where he checked none of the boxes, and the fact that they're willing to pull the trigger on him, which I you guys know how high I was on him. I thought he was a
yeah,
late first, early second round kind of talent,
yeah,
but maybe they had him there too, and it got to the point. It's probably if they took him in the fourth, that he probably was a early first, mid or early second, mid second guy on their board. That's
yeah,
usually it's usually a 2 round stagger for
yeah.
how these boards work.
I mean,
So
we'll see how the boards. We'll see how the NFL board works after the All-Star games and the combine because it could be that he doesn't play. He goes to I don't know if he's going to Senior Bowl or East West, but it could be that he goes to an All-Star game and doesn't really stand out there, and ends up being a free agent even. So, but a guy like that, yeah, is the kind of guy I think they'd be pretty interested in.
but that probably works best as like you draft him. That's like your number three. You have Calvin Austin to kind of bounce in and out with him. And then you go get a second dude. That's where the offense would really need to take off. But they're never going to get that second dude with how we're operating right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate because we saw the efforts they went to try to get like a number two receiver this offseason, and it's like, well, what would even have been the point to spend 30 million on Brandon Ayuk if we're not going to throw him the ball? Like, I mean, it's almost like we dodged a bullet by not grabbing any of these cats, and spending draft capital or excuse me, capital.
I like capital though. I want to use that for something. That's
I
pretty
know
good.
it kind of sounded good, but but it's like thank God we didn't give away like some primary picks for guys we wouldn't even get the ball and we'd spend a ton of money on. It
So,
just
so do you think Brian Thomas Jr. would have because he has 1,000 yards receiving? Do we think he would have more or less than 500 yards if he's with the Steelers?
I'd I'll tackle this first. I'd say more only because and I was very high on Brian Thomas Jr. I loved him coming out. I saw him as, a guy I think who could be like a very good, potentially elite number one. He has the side speed and hands for what this offense needs. They need another outside big vertical threat. And I think he would have fit in great personally. Now, maybe more when Russell Wilson started playing instead of when Justin Fields was playing.
But
But
that is actually one thing Justin Fields does pretty well. He throws that sideline deep ball,
sure,
which
sure.
fits. I mean, if I'm going to answer your question, I'm going to say it's a no-brainer. I felt like that was a better pick at the time. I love Patano. I think that's if he ends up being starter for you on the outside, that's a huge victory regardless, even though he didn't contribute that much this year. But yeah, Brian Thomas is like would have been a perfect complement. Also into blocking, I think those LSU guys translate well to the NFL because for whatever reason, that program is a very hardworking and it's a lot of competition for who gets on the field. So cats that started at wide receiver there, I find have had really good careers in the NFL.
Yeah, they've got some dog in them there, and it's because they know if they go to LSU, eventually they're going to get the bone and they're going to be able to take off with it. It's the reason why I'm, very intrigued by like adding a guy like Kyron Lacy in the second round.
I was going to ask about that because
Yeah,
he's very Pickensy with his kind of character on the field, but
mm-hmm.
man, can run routes and catch the ball. Like,
Yeah,
is that with how? Okay, that's the question. With how Pickens is currently, how his stint here has gone with all the drama past 2 years and all that stuff. If you knew that you were going to get the same level of drama with Kyron Lacy, would you take him in the second?
That's tough.
yeah.
I think no. I think it's got to affect their decision a little bit anyway, especially in an offense that they're not winging it around to wide receivers all day long anyway. Since Bruce Arians is not the coordinator, then I think it's sort of I'd rather have guys that are Amon St. Ra. Like I'd rather have that guy.
Yeah, yeah,
Less
I would tend
talented,
to
less
agree.
talented than Pickens and Lacey, but they're probably a better fit.
Yeah. If we were running the Cincinnati offense, I'd say, hell yeah, get me another outside receiver that can, check off almost every single box I want in a receiver. But while we're still running this ridiculous style of offense, absolutely not,
I would say, by the way, CJ Daniels, who played opposite Lacey, and at some point he got hurt
Hmm.
during halfway through the year or two-thirds of the way through the year, and now he's instead of coming out because of that injury, I think, and losing the end of the season, he's transferring to Miami. But
Hmm.
that's a guy that he was an alpha at Liberty, and then came to LSU, playing behind but was getting the ball and making great plays. But he's another guy, sort of unselfish, good blocker, both at Liberty and at LSU. That would be the kind of guy, almost a better fit for them than, I mean, Puka Nacua would be like the guy they really need. But, like there's not that many Puka Nacuas in the world, but at least a guy who is bigger bodied, willing to give it up, is a threat to get the ball downfield. Like that's probably the style of player that they're looking for.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Unfortunately, I just think we're kind of stuck with, and until we see any real meaningful change, it's hard to project anything at this point. Shoot, we don't even know who's going to be under, contract next year for quarterback. You brought it up or whatever, and it's like the only free agent that's worth a salt is Sam Darnold. Who's had a revolutionary year with Minnesota, and I'd be shocked if they let him get out of there. It's like I don't care if you just drafted JJ McCarthy. You're 13 and or 14-2, challenging for the top seed in the NFC. You don't get rid of quarterbacks if they're winning football
No,
games.
he's played great, man. No, I think you're more likely, your choice is, more like Kirk Cousins. I mean, they're looking for, I'm sure at this point they're looking for a bridge to, give the veteran play, and as long as their defense is still together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else they can do. It's tough, man. I'm not sure what else they could do at the place where they are in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, if they went into the offseason and said, "Man, I'm not really sure about any of the quarterbacks that I have on my roster," I mean, the guys available are not very inspiring. We're talking about Drew Lock. Even though if you go off his like 4 touchdown performance against the Colts the other day, he looked otherworldly. But a lot of quarterbacks have looked otherworldly against the Colts this year. So yes, that was a shot at
I,
the
I,
hometown team there. But
I could see a JJ McCarthy trade. They've already dipped their toes in the water with that kind of trade, with the Fields trade. They probably liked him. Michigan guy, plays the style of offense that they like to run or played. I could see that happening.
I didn't even want to speak that into existence. That's why I didn't mention it. But yeah,
yeah,
no, unbelievable. I mean, if Tennessee finishes with a top three pick and they end up taking one of these rookie quarterbacks,
yeah.
I don't know that I'd see him as the starter in Pittsburgh, but I could see them be their kind of guy that they would, much like Fields, that they would take as a backup. And you could get Levis for backup money probably, but or for he's still on his rookie deal, so you probably could swing some sort of a mid-round pick for Levis if that's the way it ends up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that yeah, a really uninspiring free agent quarterback market like there normally is. If you're good, you don't hit the market. That's kind of how it works.
Yep.
The only young guy I might be willing to take a chance on is Mac Jones. I know he's not great by any means, but at least he's a young guy that you could at least say, screw it, we'll give you the reins for a year or so.
So let me toss another one up. He looked pretty decent when he played this year. It's kind of fieldsy, but Malik Willis.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
probably the best looking guy. This is funny though. Imagine you, especially when everyone's talking about how good our quarterback situation looked when we got, oh my God, they let us get Fields and Russell Wilson, and we're sitting here locked up a playoff spot, and we're talking about Mac Jones, JJ McCarthy, Malik Willis,
Kirk
and
Cousins.
Kirk Cousins.
Sam Darnold even.
With the benefit of or you told us we were talking about Sam Darnold, then we probably would have laughed. But then Will
I'll
Levis, who
throw, I'll throw out one more name. And don't laugh at me until you've at least thought it through. Aaron Rodgers.
I saw that floated out there, and the only reason I wouldn't mind it is because Rodgers does have an edge to him, at least on offense, where I'm not sure he'd come to Pittsburgh and kind of put up with the bullshit offense we're trying to run to a degree. He'd be like, no, we're going out there. I want to wing the ball. I want to, score points and stuff. But I don't even know if he can last a whole year anymore. Like I know he did this year, but boy, he did not look good trying to last a whole year.
We know we would
get is not there anymore, like it used to be. So, Korey,
we would add Alan Lazard if that excites you guys at all.
True, and he'll block. So,
yeah. No, I mean, I guess I would say if you determine by the end of the season that neither Russell Wilson nor Justin Fields is the guy going forward, then you'd almost be better off having somebody to like take a shot for a year and then get a quarterback in the draft next year. Like that felt like that should be the strategy for this year, and I was kind of hoping that's more how they would play it. But since they finished a little bit near the top of the mediocrity pile, if they had finished a little lower in the mediocrity pile, they still have a shot, I think, to trade up. But since they missed that boat on that, then it feels like we're going to reset to next year. Like I have this, I'm sorry, guys, because I know this is really not what the listeners would like to hear right now. If you're listening to the show. If you're still listening to the show after this whole season, like God bless you.
yeah, kudos to you.
But,
yeah.
But I would say that it feels like next year is going to be so similar to this year. It would shock me if we didn't have almost all these same conversations at the end of next year, because there doesn't seem to be a real easy way out of it. Even if they, Mike Tomlin said, I had a great season. I mean, I felt like I got a lot out of this group, and I love my job, but I think it's time for me to like move on and do some other thing I want to do, whatever. But like, even if Mike Tomlin left and they switched to a new coaching staff, cleaned house a little bit, traded away some guys that aren't going to be around for the rebuild. Like they really committed to like a rebuild. Even if all of that happened, it still feels like you're going to be going to the next year, like, got to get a quarterback. Our defense is old. We need replacements on like everything that's an issue now, I think to a degree is still going to be an issue in a year.
One of the things that's frustrating with this, and I know it's not how these NFL teams operate because they care a lot about, Blesto, and they have all these kind of cumulative boards and they care about what the other teams think of them. But not me and Will have had our draft misses, but we were pretty firm on Cam Ward being a top half of the first round QB last year. And you would think that's, someone in some of these scouting departments would have had to have thought the same thing. It's like, even if Cam Ward goes and he gets feedback, you're a third or fourth round pick. If you want to get you want to be a higher pick, go back. What stopped the Steelers from saying, listen, we don't care what happens. We don't care who's available. We will take you in the second round. You will get first round money. And like the moment it comes up, we're looking to extend you. It's like,
you'll be free. You'll be free in 4 years instead of 5.
Yeah, like we give you a concrete, we will take you in the second round no matter what. And then now that, like, how come that kind of stuff isn't happening? Like, that's how you, as a good team, that's how you get a guy. You get a guy to come out that other teams are lower on. You don't care if they've got a fourth round grade on him. Go out and get him. Like, and the reason I'm using examples, like, it's not like no one could have seen this coming. We've been talking about Cam Ward for 2 years now.
Yeah.
3. What, since 2021 spring?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like we've been talking about him for this is not like something that we're like making up. I'm sure we talked about him these couple of weeks last season, right? Like, I'm sure because that's what might come out. So I just don't like, that's how you land a guy. Like, use an example. I don't think he's as good as Cam Ward was, but you want to go get a guy, tell Taylor Green you'll take him in the second round. Just guarantee it. Don't care what the teams say. Don't care how stupid it looks. Don't care if the Mel Kiper laughs at you on draft night. Take the athlete with the hose, bring in your vet, see if you got something. If you don't, take another one. like it's cyclical, but you're not going anywhere until you get a QB, and you're not going to get one drafting at 20 and being passive and taking Kenny Pickett's. That's just the nature of it.
Even the number of years where you could trade up as the Chiefs did from 25 to 10 is, there are limited numbers of years that you'd be able to do that. Like the class has to be at least three and probably more like four or five deep for you to even have a chance to do that.
Yeah, very true. Taylor Green, remind me, Arkansas quarterback.
Yeah. Was it
Okay.
Boise State? By the way, I don't know if you watched last night's game, all I could think of was, dude, if you hadn't screwed over Taylor Green last year, you'd be in the second round of the playoffs right now. Like,
Yeah.
that was the missing piece. If you got that, like Korey described, you got the athlete, a quarterback with a hose. Man, he's making some plays last night that could have been the difference in the game. So yeah, I'm sure that they don't regret it because they really loved Matson and they were already, moving away from playing Taylor Green there. But I feel like Taylor Green at Arkansas, I understand why he's staying for another year, but I'm with Korey. I'm like, why wouldn't a team make a guarantee to that kid and say, look, no matter what, we're taking you at this point. I don't think the answer to the question why those guys don't come out, Korey, you know better than anybody, is NIL. You're big. I know you're a big, you've made so much money from NIL. What'd you get? What'd you get?
$400 in a class action settlement.
Yeah, baby, $400. I'll take it. Good for you. No, I'm like that's the main reason why those guys, like the guys that could have come out last year that didn't come out, the guys that could have come out this year that didn't come out. The main reason is it's, they got, with six zeros reason to not come out right away. It sort of delays their, I imagine that the money that a guy like Quinn Ewers made this year, he might lose it all by how far he fell in the draft. But like if he came out last year, he has to literally say, I'm passing up whatever it was, $5 million to go to the NFL to make $3 million. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know how much. What's the rookie cap salary? Does anybody know? Or if you're like a top
You
five?
It's like a 25 because I was looking at this because we talked about the Arch Manning thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you get $24 million signing bonus, so that does smack NIL. But then it's like 4 or 5 million a year, which that number is going to keep going up in college. It's like if Oregon goes after Ewers, that's going to be in the realm of 8 to 10, if I had to guess.
Yeah, amazing, man.
Yeah, like there are still like I can speak firsthand because my one of my close friends, he plays in Maryland. He said from the time he was a sophomore in high school, I'm playing 3 years and going to the NFL. Like, and that's what he did. It's like I think Jim Nagy had a post about him where he's like, yeah, thought he should have gone back, but like he would have made some NIL money. Maryland's NIL is pretty good, and he was like, no, I want to go play in the NFL. So there are still guys like that. Like they still exist out there.
Yeah.
Was that your defensive tackle friend?
Yeah.
What's his name again? If you don't mind.
Jordan.
Jordan Phillips. I was thinking Jalen Phillips, and I knew that was wrong. So did he come out, declare and come out, or?
Yeah, he declared he's going to be at East West Shrine.
Okay, all right, good to know. Good to know.
Is he under 300? Their guys are always 285.
He's like he walking in, he was like 285, 290. I want to say he's around 315, 320 now.
For that school, well, they're a little like Virginia Tech. They play those the guys in at defensive tackle who are like big movers. So that's great. Good for him.
Yeah.
He went viral at the beginning of the year because he did like a 405-pound like snatch press or something like that. It was right around the freaks list, but that's probably where people have seen him. It's for when you think this guy's going to do a pretty heavy squat, and then bar just shoots over his head.
Gotcha. I remember you bringing him up before, so that's why when you said that I wanted to make sure I remembered the name. So, but
there are still those guys in college. Like I'm sure there are multiple guys where like you don't know unless you talk to them, but they don't care for the NIL. They want to go play professional football.
True.
Well, let's talk. We got drifted a little bit off our topic.
All right, is this a draft podcast?
Sorry. How about that freaking T. Higgins? Never going to be a Steeler, but what a game! Oh my God! Like Cincinnati tried 5 ways to give away that game, and including T. Higgins fumbling, actually earlier. Speaking of make your mistakes while you still have time to like overcome them, I
Mhm.
felt like T. Higgins was the difference in that game, and what a with your season on the line, what a game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how big of a game he has against Pittsburgh because he's actually one of these guys that's on the short list for chasing incentives this week.
Mm.
So I saved this on um, Twitter or whatever, X, whatever you want to call it. So let's see here. T. Higgins is 142 yards away from the 1,000 yard benchmark. I don't know. That seems like a little bit much to ask for this week, but who the hell knows?
Well,
Um,
he is playing, by the way, for the quarterback that I just was asked what is my ballot for the awards this year?
mhm.
Uh, the person that I named as the league MVP, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has more touchdowns this year than Lamar. I don't know if you
Yeah,
knew that.
I did. I saw.
Like that
Yeah.
dude has the most yards and most not only touchdown passes but over total TDs. Yeah, so I feel like it's not impossible. By the way, on that Joe report, I was just going to DraftKings to see, with the yardage over under for T. Higgins, and I was about to do the bet while I'm online with you, because yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good bet, a pretty safe bet. The thing about a PCL injury that I can tell you from personal experience, had one 13 years ago, and had suffered one on Sunday, not as severe. But even though this one isn't so severe today, here's the biggest issue you have with PCL, weirdly enough, backpedaling. So
Mm,
I can right now I can run forward. I can't. Backpedaling is really hard right now. It's like if you lift your toe off the ground while you're going backwards and push off on it, that's the thing that is just
mm.
the most painful thing. So if he isn't fully recovered from a PCL injury, and it's going to be issues with his back pedal that you'll notice. So that would be the thing to look out for.
Okay.
Uh, that probably means more press man for him, which isn't necessarily the worst. But what are you going to put him up against Chase playing press man all day? Like that sounds like a bad idea.
Hmm.
So I think it's going to be hard for him to play zone because he'll have to, unless it's like you're totally flat zone and then come downhill only. But yeah, if you've got a back pedal and
Mm.
then flip your hips and or fire, that's got to be really difficult with the PCL.
Okay, gotcha. So we're liking the T Higgins over 142.
Is it Dante Jackson playing opposite him, I guess?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. It'll be interesting. Funny enough, George Pickens is on that list. He needs 100 yards to hit the 1,000 yard mark. Man,
Also feels pretty good.
yeah, Mary say that's another one you'd probably be okay with this week, uh, considering Cincinnati secondary. But
If they don't target him and he doesn't get to 100 yards, he might never play for the Steelers again.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah, I'll say that. Unfortunately, I made the decision to start him in fantasy this past week, and I shouldn't have, thinking he'd have a big day. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of ready to ship him off. I'm so tired with the lack of effort, like when the ball's not coming his way, stuff. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. It just gets old.
you're shipping off a guy without having a backup plan, though. Sorry, go ahead, Corey.
I think it's salvageable. I think that
Well, I do too, but
it's yeah, I was about to say I just couldn't sign off shipping him out until we had like more. It's not like we have it's an Antonio Brown, but then we have three dudes behind him, or we have,
mhm,
we can just get rid of Emmanuel Sanders. Like we have nothing behind him
yeah,
right now.
we
We
do.
have nothing. And so unless there's like serious investment to the position, you got to try and figure out how to fix the relationship and get him to give effort, because other teams see that too. Like it's been enough drama where other teams aren't going to be like giving up a fortune for him. They're going to say this guy's a diva. Like even Stephon Diggs in Buffalo, who is known for being a diva, he wasn't as bad as this. And so it's something that can be fixed. I mean, he didn't have his issues at Georgia. It was that he fought people. Like it wasn't lack of effort or anything like that. So it's something that's happened in the Steelers, you know, warehouse, which is ironic given our coach is supposed to be preventing stuff like that. But until we have a good plan, like Will mentioned, we would be the worst passing attack in the league by a lot. That he's the only guy keeping it above water, I think.
Yeah, it's more just like a gut reaction. You just hate seeing that shit. I know we shouldn't trade him out or whatever, but it's just like at the time I was just like, damn it, George, would you at least run a route? Like he just won't even run a route sometimes. He'll just go out there and do nothing. It's just frustrating, looking back as a fan and not seeing it. But I agree. I'm not saying we should trade him or whatever, but it just gets old after a while. So
That's
He
a
reminds me of a pass rusher who, if they don't win immediately, they just quit pass rushing.
yeah.
Which I think when you're tired, when you're facing a tough, if you feel like the person you're rushing against is really hard to beat anyway, and you don't win on that initial move, I'm sure it's like I can see the psychology of it.
Hmm.
But I feel like you're wide receiver in the NFL, especially number one wide receiver in the NFL, that even if you get stymied at the beginning, you got to keep working. You know, like more like the way that Travis Kelce plays his position is, when he's a pass receiver is, he's not worried at all if his initial route doesn't work. He's still looking for an opening and a place to
Hmm.
sit, trying to figure out where his quarterback wants him to go. Like I feel like you can contribute a lot of stuff on routes where they initially take away what you're trying to do. But
Yeah.
what's left if you get rid of him is, man, like you're in full on tanking territory if you don't really replace with someone of that caliber immediately, just to get to mediocre. Like, wow, that would be awful.
you want to know what would be like, I think the only surefire way to fix this, and we can question how much it matters for the offense if we're going to pass them, but if you bring in or if you draft, like if we drafted Brian Thomas Jr., someone who is pushing him on talent but is actually like going hard every play, that's the only way to snap someone awake, because in that receiver room there's no one to push him. Like
Hmm.
like if you're George Pickens and Van Jefferson comes up to you and it's like, hey man, run your routes harder, you're gonna laugh in his face. Like, who are you? Who are you talking to me? Or his receiver coach is like, what? Inazi. He's like 32 years old, right? Like, that dude's saying something. You're just kind of like, yeah, okay. But you have a dude who's younger than you, same kind of athlete you are, coming out. He's getting targets. He's running hard on all these routes. It's all of a sudden you gotta look in the mirror and say, shit, do I want to be second banana? Right? Like that's the way that you fix something like this.
Yeah, and I'm not sure there's a ton of those guys that are going to come in and push him immediately in this draft if we don't invest like a round one type of pick in it. Outside of that, maybe like that round two Kyron Lacey type of guy.
I'll pop Roman Wilson. Like, I forgot he existed until I started talking about that. Like that. Is he still hurt, or is he just
He
So
practiced yesterday,
he did have a full practice yesterday. I was gonna say that. So
but I don't. That's not a guy. That isn't the solution to this. He's not an outside receiver. Never
oh no,
has been. And and,
I
and it's like
last year
he's how much of an upgrade from Calvin Austin is he as a slot guy? Like,
he might be
huh,
downgrade if we're
yeah.
being
yeah,
it's I liked Calvin Austin more coming out of the draft, and he's shown more in the league. So
Yeah.
like I say, he's actually played pretty well this year for us for what we've asked him to do. It's not like we're asking Calvin Austin to go out there and block a whole lot. Like we're
So, I
asking
mean,
him to run and get him.
I'm gonna preempt your normal. Like, I'm sure you're gonna ask us about matchups, more matchups, or other things. But you guys at all concerned about where TJ Watt is right now? Because I think this last three games might be the, you know, three of the worst games in a row he's ever played in terms of the least amount of impact. Yeah, he's like occasionally made a play or something, but I felt like this last week in particular, like he was pretty much erased, which is not like him.
Yeah, I guess my question is how healthy is he too? It's like I know he wasn't on the injury report, but I'm not sure that injury report's that entirely accurate if he's not on it. In all honesty, I mean he had an injury where we thought, oh shit, it could be potentially like a month-long injury to him being able to miraculously play the week after. And like you said, he hasn't made much of an impact. So I question that he's not on the injury report at all. honestly. It's the same thing with with Russell Wilson yesterday. Supposedly getting a resting veterans day, but then getting logged as a light practice day. It's like, how accurate can this report be? So
Yeah.
I don't think Watt's anywhere close to 100%. I think he's gutting it out because that's the type of football character guy he is. He
Yeah.
believes if he's at 1%, he's gonna go. This is kind of that who he is in a nutshell. So I think he's hurt. They were saying something during the game where it's like he might have a hand injury of some sort too, because
Something with his arm, we don't know where. Somewhere
yeah,
from shoulder to his hand. His thumb. Oh, his thumb was wrapped, so it
yeah,
could be thumb injury. But I think there's definitely a lot of little things going on there that I'm sure it's
yeah.
like everybody is hurt. But I don't know. I just feel like our pass rush, even if it's not really just about TJ, the Steelers pass rush making quarterbacks act urgently is light and night and day from where it was earlier in the season. Like in September and even into October, they just terrorized people, and I think that's been so gone the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they might be beat up. Yes, it might be injury related. Even Highsmith just came off an injury. Watt's playing at least banged up. But it's more than just that. I mean, even in the interior, like the guys that were, haven't really seen much of Keanu Benton lately. Nothing from Ogunjobi, nothing from any of the other cats that they have. And, when you have TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith on the outside, your interior guys should be getting to eat a little bit in the pass rush, but we're not seeing that. And I feel like, once again, they're not doing anything to help them. There's not a ton of stunts going on. There aren't a ton of like zone blitzes or things to like we're going to overload one side of the offensive line, that kind of thing. We don't do anything like that, or once in a while. I guess the DJ, the ball that he batted up in the air that Queen caught might have been the only TE stunt that I remember in the entire game. It worked to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it just feels like that was carrying the team when Justin Fields was playing quarterback, and
I,
that's now disappeared at the worst possible time. And we're playing against a team now that's either number one or number two in offense, depending on what you want to measure. That's, I guess, I mean, I'll throw it to you two guys. Like, do you feel after these last three games, and maybe have PTSD, but do you feel optimism about this matchup?
I'll ask a question quickly back. Do you guys know where the Steelers rank in age on the defensive side of the ball?
It's got to be near oldest.
They are the oldest. They have the oldest defense in the NFL, or at least when I checked earlier in the season, that was the stat. Like that's so maybe some other team had some free
Especially
agent
with
action.
Cam Sutton and Ogunjobi playing over the guys
Yeah.
that were playing before. I mean, say that's even older. So yeah.
So they are the oldest defense. I mean, should we be surprised that they are petering out? I mean, they've stayed relatively healthy.
Hey, I'm right here, man. What are you trying to say?
But I mean, I mentioned this too. It's like so you got a bunch of old guys, and they're starting to get beat down at the end of the season. And it was the one thing where I was like, okay, we signed Patrick Queen. I think this could really work if we blitz the linebackers a ton. And we're not blitzing the linebackers a ton. So I was like making this pitch in the offseason about how we could have this kind of go back to the stunt heavy, you know, get your linebackers coming downhill, get them on running backs, put the O line in bad positions. And Keanu Benton's an athlete. He can move around on these stunts. Cam Hayward knows how to pull a guy in with that, what should be called defensive holding. We're not utilizing it. Nick Herbig can run around in those stunts, go line up like a linebacker. It's what we talked about earlier. It's just a waste of resources, and we're making our defense stagnant. Nothing we're doing on the front seven part of the defense is nothing that like a Pop Warner team couldn't run. Like I've seen more exotic Pop Warner defenses than what we're doing with our front seven. Which when you have the dudes, it can work, but when your dudes are banged up, you're left with what we're looking at.
Yeah, and conversely, we're going against a Bengals team which features, a very young offensive core at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Andre Yosheva. the Burton kid from Alabama. That they have a athletic room of tight ends too. Mike Gesicki, he's older, but he's been a lot more of the game plan recently. Even Tanner
Rookie,
Hudson,
rookie.
yeah, Chase Brown, rookie running back who's pretty explosive. It's just a bad timing.
Yeah, I mean, if the Bengals had anything close to defensive, I mean, they had one guy on defense who's really freaking great, and if they had anything close to that on the back end, they, would be a contender for the division at the very least. I mean,
Mhm.
their offense is awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said, I right now, I might take Burrow over just about anybody playing quarterback on the planet right now. So
Yeah.
this is an example of coming off the Kansas City game and Ravens game where their quarterbacks are really integral to their, what makes their offense special. You got another guy who's the same, and playing in the life or death situation for his team. They'll have they won't. It's not possible for them to be eliminated before they play. So their only option is to play as if winning this game is everything.
Mhm.
And the Steelers, as much as they would prefer to win this game, you know how that thing goes. Like Korey, you know when you know that it's your season's not going to end if you lose today. It's not the same as when the season could end if we don't win this game. It's a
You,
different vibe.
you know what this feels like is you remember that Browns game. I'm pretty sure I could be remembering it wrong, but I think we could have knocked the Browns out of the playoffs. We didn't, and then they came back and they beat us in the playoffs.
Yes, sir.
I just can't help but shit. It feels the same where we weren't getting the bye, if I recall. We weren't getting the bye. If we had a chance to knock out division rival, we didn't punch the gas. We played the same. We weren't aggressive, and they came back and they punched us in the mouth for it. Kind of feels the same kind of situation for me.
Yep. Yep. This not I was really wishing, we'd end this year on the Cleveland Browns, not the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's put it that way. Of all the years where we've ended playing the Browns, this was not the year we wanted to finish playing the Bengals at the end
But
of the year.
especially where the Browns are like in super tank mode right now. They're like, we are
Mm-hmm.
not ending up with worse than the third pick. That's just, let's just make it clear. We're
Mm-hmm.
getting at least the third pick.
Right.
I do pretty stupid how the schedule is now, where we played how many of our division games in the last 6 weeks or 7 weeks,
But it
but
should be obvious why, Korey. Hard
hard
knock.
enough.
Yeah. HBO.
But that's not an excuse. They're still playing that. It's just as a fan, I like a little more spread out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It
Well,
also it also makes it even out a little bit. Like some teams are playing better football early than they are late, and injuries become a factor later. It's like if you save everything to the end, you don't even know who's left for the team sometimes. But yeah, that I think that was especially you'll see it if they have this again next year with a different division, they'll probably end up in the same boat. I feel like that had to be a television decision. It made a lot of sense for the program to have so many interdivisional matchups to talk about.
yeah. Well, believe it or not, Pittsburgh's not the only team that plays some games this week. We will obviously be pulling for Cleveland to try to pull an upset on Saturday before the Steelers play, I believe. Or are we the first game on Saturday or the second? I felt like we were the second.
Steelers play at night on Saturday.
Okay, yep. So we'll know where we're pigeonholed in, believe it or not, after that first game.
Well, heck, Korey, they're going to play both DTR and Bailey Zappi. So
Ooh,
Oh,
really,
they
really look.
really? Good God.
If, if DTR's playing too good, they'll call in the ringer Zappy. So I think that's how that's going to go. Whoever's playing better is getting.
it's in the hole. Yeah, exactly. Can't afford to win that game. The meeting rooms this week. They're like, you see what the Giants did last week? We are not going to make that mistake here. We
I'm,
have
I'm
Cleveland. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure DTR. I saw some stat as like in EPA as a individual stat. I think it's a little squirrely, but out of like 1,679 sample seasons or whatever, something like that, Carr has like the 1,677th worst season, where he's like out of 1,600, or basically 1,700, second worst or third worst season ever, which is kind of crazy because it's like he's got like one touchdown and 8 interceptions or something like that.
This is a league where Mitch Trubisky played, you know? Mainly.
But there's a few games I feel like we should pick this week. There's not a ton of great games, honestly, especially with how, like we kind of highlighted, some teams are tanking. You don't get a sense they're going to try really hard, and they've told their guys, just it's no big deal. Go out there and play. We got to put butts in the seats. But let's start off with probably the game of the week because it's going to decide the number one seed in the NFC. The Vikings are headed to the Lions. They are both 14-2. This game decides who gets home field throughout the playoffs. Will, I'm going to start with you. Detroit is at home. They are favored by 3. So it's pretty much company standard line coin flip.
I think a month ago, I decided that I'm just going to pick the home team in every matchup in the NFC North. Because it's like these teams are pretty close,
Mhm.
And they each have their really strong points and each their flaws. I worry a little bit about Detroit's offense and their aggressiveness and going for it on fourth down against a team that's as well coached on defense as Minnesota is. So I think it could be a very close game, but I'm gonna see Detroit find a way to win.
Okay, Korey.
Yeah, I think I made up my mind either last week or the week before that I was going to stop picking against the Vikings because I did about 5 times at the beginning of the year, and clearly seeing that they're 14-2, didn't have a good hit rate with that. So I'm just going to roll with the Vikings here. I'm going to stick with my guns. That even if it's the line, I'm going to all the times I picked against them, this is just paying it forward, and hopefully they do right by me this time. So I'll take the Vikings to win.
All right. I'm going to go with the Lions because I feel that it is more important for them to have home field advantage than Minnesota. I feel like defense travels, and I feel, and let's face it too, Minnesota will have a home game in the playoffs until they were to somehow play, the Lions again, for a third time if they get the number 2 seed. So that's kind of I am with it. I think Detroit wants it even more.
They can't get the 2 seed, right?
Oh,
they
Minnesota
can't.
and Detroit are both in the same boat. They either get the 1 seed or 5.
oh, you're right. You're right. Excuse me.
They really need to do what the NBA did and just kind of. I think they just need to go to the other method of seeding where it's kind of based off a record, because that's brutal. I mean, the 3 best teams in the NFC might be from one division.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. My bad. I don't know
They
why
get to
I
play the
thought
board. Each get to play the Bears twice, so that could have inflated the record. Kidding.
But so scratch my thing, my prior argument. But I just feel like Detroit. It would mean more to Detroit to have games in Ford Field where their crowd is so electric. It keeps them in games. So I like Detroit. I just think that they had kind of an option to rest their guys this past week and decided not to. And I feel they're just going to kind of come out with that same mindset and gut out a way to win, which, when a game versus San Fran was actually a lot closer than I thought it would be. So I like Detroit here to pull out and win this one. Now we're going to go to 2 teams where, funny enough, I think these 2 teams have ended on each other's schedule like the last 3 or 4 years. And it's always a toss-up of who wins this. The Jaguars are coming to Indianapolis. Indianapolis is favored at home by 5. Korey, I'll throw it to you.
The Jaguars look really messed up, don't they? They look rough. I'll ask the Indianapolis expert. Who's supposed to be playing quarterback for the Colts?
It hasn't really come out yet. It sounds like if Richardson's healthy, they will play him. But at this point, I just don't know because he didn't practice much, if at all, last week.
It's
So I don't know.
it is crazy that Flacco's still playing, right? Like thinking back to how many years ago, like I was the Ravens quarterback when I was like the first games I can remember, and he's still kicking and playing semi-meaningful games for an NFL franchise. It is
Well,
just
by
kind
the
of
way, we
crazy.
mentioned all those Nick quarterback names earlier. Joe Flacco to the Steelers is a
Oh,
bridge quarterback.
Dude.
I
No.
could see, but I'm gonna go. I don't. I think the Jags are just too dysfunctional. I'm going with the Colts. I'll take them to cover too. I don't think you can pick the Jags right now with what they've put on the television display.
All right, well,
I think the Jaguars are essentially in the position that the Browns are in, not quite as bad, but they've locked up so much money into their quarterback now that it's really tied their hands for what they can do. Probably going to affect who they can sign or not sign, and they're a mess. So like that's a really bad combination because you have to you got to draft so well, and you got to find yourself some value by free agents. It puts a lot of onus on the front office, and man, I just don't see Trevor Lawrence being a guy that, being Patrick Mahomes and basically taking whoever they throw out there with him, he'll figure out a way. So, yeah, I think the tank continues for Jacksonville, and maybe they'll get lucky and they can find some team that missed out on the quarterback draft sweepstakes to pay a draft, pay a high draft price for Trevor Lawrence at that price tag, because I think, like I said, I got this vibe that if they could figure out a way out of it, they might at this point.
gotcha. I really want to pick against the Colts just because, like, after you lose to the Giants, it's like, what the fuck? Uh, it's like the Giants,
Losing against the team that was desperately trying to lose. It's
right,
like,
right.
damn.
But I, I don't know. I feel like if Flacco plays, I'm more inclined to go with Jacksonville, but I don't know who's going to play yet. So right now, I'll go with Indy. They're starting to run the ball a lot better with Jonathan Taylor. Shocker, what happens when you go play with your best player. So I'll take Indy. I don't know if they're going to cover though. I don't care who's at cover back. Five's an odd number. There's always like a late field goal or touchdown score that makes a 5 point thing this early in the week a little hard to predict. So
This would
I'll
be a
take
good
the
test.
Colts.
This would be a good test for future candidates for your Steelers quarterback in 2025 between Joe Flacco and Mac Jones. Maybe.
Fuck. All right, let's do one more and then we'll kick it to our game. Washington heading to Dallas. Washington's a 4.5 point favorite. Um, Washington has already locked up a spot, so I don't know how hard they're going to go this game. I don't know because they're locked into a wild card. They can't win the division. The Eagles have that, so I don't know how hard this team's really going to go. I do know that Zach Ertz is on the incentive list this week. He needs like 9 catches and 2 touchdowns or something like that to get another like $750,000. So I don't know if they're going to just pepper him with stuff this week, but Washington didn't look good this past week. So I think Washington will come out and try to. I'll start. I think Washington will come out and win this game. I don't think it's going to be a good game by any means. I think it could end up being pretty low scoring. So I actually like Dallas to cover at the 4.5, but not win. Korey, I'll throw it to you.
I don't know. Something about this game is just telling me Dallas. I think cutting Zeke at this stage of the season, it's kind of like a weird, like,
They cut
you know,
Zeke.
yeah,
Oh shit! I did not see that.
yeah. I feel like it's just kind of like a weird screw it. We're just it feels like a week where they might just see what they got, if that makes sense. Like where they might just go with the young guys, go be aggressive. Maybe I'm reading too much into cutting their old vet, but the Commanders don't really have much to play for. I feel like the Cowboys are actually playing with a little dignity because they have not had a good season, and I feel like they kind of want to save face a little bit at least. So I'm gonna go with the Cowboys to win this. Just kind of rolling off the, maybe just trying to see what shakes and cutting Zeke and going with the young guys.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm reading up on this Ezekiel Elliott thing really quick. I guess he asked for his release. So what
But
wasn't
Or
Yeah.
what's he be on a playoff team?
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But anyway,
Would he be the worst running back on the Steelers roster?
I
no.
think so.
It's close. It's close. I like Cordell Patterson. You know, I don't know. Cordell Patterson. Yeah, if you're asking me, the thing that Washington stands to lose here is they would become the seventh seed in all likelihood if they lose
Mm,
this game.
okay.
Um, and it's like a difference between going to Philadelphia or LA. And I think if I'm them, I might rather go to LA by quite a bit than go to Philly, a team that, you
Oh yeah.
know, it's like has really owned the division. It's a different kind, let's put it this way, it's a different kind of matchup and intensity than going to LA. So feels like they'd have at least a shot in LA on a shootout. So going to take the Commanders. God damn.
Whoa,
It
Will, watch it.
sucks to be old because it gets so ingrained in your head. You know how many times that I've said that
Well,
for the course of
I've
my
heard
life?
that I've seen rumors that they might look at switching back. So
Yeah.
there's that.
Whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Are we picking to me the most intriguing? Is that you have any more in mind?
Well, what was the next game for you?
Well, I think especially in light of what's on the line for Tampa, which is they need to win or have Atlanta lose in order to win the division, and or else they're out of the playoffs basically. And they're playing against the New Orleans Saints, who just
Oh,
had this a tragedy in their town. I imagine this is going to be a supercharged game. Actually, it might turn into like a real story before the week is out.
So yeah, that game was on there just because Tampa Bay needs to win, obviously. But I guess I'm not familiar. What happened in New Orleans?
Oh, there was a terrorist attack. Basically, someone drove a truck into Bourbon Street last night, and New Year's Eve celebration. There
Oh
were
my gosh!
moment 12 people killed and 20 people injured or something. So it's like
Wow.
that's a town that lives and dies with the Saints, really, and I know that is probably something that I'm sure they would like to represent. So it's going to be at least the best effort you can get from New Orleans in the game, and a game that is a win or go home maybe potentially for Tampa. So Atlanta's got the Carolina Panthers. So
Hmm.
it's like that seems pretty like if you're Tampa and you lose this game, you're in trouble. So I'm going to say I think there's a real chance that the Saints pull the upset, which would be a damn shame because I think Tampa has a really good shot to, play whoever that loser of the NFC West sweepstakes is. They're going to have a trip to Tampa, and that is not going to be a cakewalk for that team. I feel like Tampa on its day could beat anybody. So I don't know what the spread is in that game, but I'm going to take New Orleans in the points.
So right now the Saints are getting 13 and a half to
Yeah,
cover.
I'm taking the Saints in 13 and a half all day. In fact,
Yeah.
in that in on my bet. I bet Higgins over 80 yards receiving. I mean, I did it while we were waiting, and now I'm doing the Saints plus the 13 and a half.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's hard to believe.
that's huge. That's a massive line.
Hmm. But yeah. So let's see here. Yeah. So quickly, yeah, it's either the Buccaneers or the Falcons. Every other team in the NFC is locked up, and
Mhm.
then
Well, it's actually did the Rams clinch the division?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So that they clinched with a win this week with their NFC uh, strength of record or whatever. The only team undecided on the AFC side are the Broncos, Dolphins, and Bengals. They're all in the hunt. So I'm not super sure on all the playoff scenarios at this
I
point.
got it. If you want to hear, I'll make it quick. If
Yeah,
Denver
go for
wins, they're the seventh seed if they beat Kansas City.
it. Okay.
If Cincinnati, or excuse me, if the Dolphins beat the Jets, and the Broncos lose, the Dolphins are the seed, and Cincinnati needs to win and have the other two teams lose. That is
Okay.
basically.
What was the scenario for the Dolphins? I'm sorry.
Oh, a Denver loss, Miami win.
Denver lost, Miami win. Yeah, and boy, it's gonna be tough for Denver to lose with Casey resting everyone. But who knows? Weirder shit has happened. It is the NFL.
True.
But quickly going to that Atlanta or not the Atlanta game, the Buccaneers Saints game. I that really sucks about the terrorist attack. Hearts and heart and prayers go out to New Orleans. I just think the Buccaneers are going to find a way to win. It's just my gut, but I'll tell you right now, with the 13.5, I'd take the 13.5 to cover. Absolutely.
I mean, I hate to be talking about it in the terms of like a football bet because, as you said, it's
Mhm.
an absolutely terrible thing. Um, but yeah, it's like to wake up. The news this morning was that, the attack in New Orleans, and a guy got pushed in front of the subway in New York City on New Year's Eve. It's like, what a time to be alive, man. People are messed
Mhm.
up.
Hey, Korey, you have a thought on that game real quick?
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Jeremy. I think the Bucks grit it out, but that is a 13 and a half. I haven't bet in a while. I might go put that in. That is a incredible line to have. Um, I think I'm just with you. I think the Bucks win, but I think the Saints have to cover. That's too big.
Yeah, gonna lock that in when we get off. And then let's go to our game next. Cincinnati coming to Pitt. Cincinnati's favored by 1.5 right now. Korey, I'm gonna let you tee it off.
I don't feel good about this at all. I don't think there's many reasons to feel good about this game. I honestly think that there's a good chance Cincinnati gets in. I think I think Kansas City has some incentive to let Denver beat them because I as bad as the Cincinnati defense is, I guarantee you nobody wants to see them in the playoffs. That's playing. The fans might, but no wants to face T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. Period. Especially because and the Bengals they've been playoff risers, as we've kind of seen. And not only that, I think and Joe Burrow might just have this issue his whole career. If he wasn't a slow starter every year, I think he's had a slow start the last 3 years. If he wasn't a slow starter, he'd probably be a potential 3-time MVP at this point because it seems every time past week 10, he's far and away the best QB in the league. But that doesn't bode well for us this week. So I I'm a little worried this is like a blowout, if I'm being honest. I hope it's not. I hope it's a gritty Steelers win, but I'm going to call it 37 14 Cincinnati. I think it just gets ugly. I think they air it out on us.
Damn. 37. Yeah. All right. Will, what's your thought, bud?
Uh, I think the Bengals are pretty much a lock for 30. Broncos defense is actually pretty good. And I would say, I think Patrick Surtain's maybe his season maybe a little overrated, especially early in the season. But he is better at chasing Jamar Chase than anybody we got healthy right now. Even if Porter is 100%, that's still not a particularly great matchup. And then you got T. Higgins on the other side. And like T. Higgins and I think Riley Moss maybe not wasn't 100% in this last game, but Riley Moss is talent. He's a pretty talented corner. I
Mm-hmm.
would say more talented than any number two that the Steelers could put out there. So that matchup with Higgins is that seems bad to me. And the only way you're really going to get around that is your pass rush getting home. Burrow is just so good at working the pocket. That is probably if you listed all of his skills and ranked them, for like compared to other people, I would say that might be his best skill. He might be best at working the pocket of anybody in the league, and that includes Patrick Mahomes, who I think is fantastic at it as well.
Yeah.
Josh Allen also very good at it, but it's like those guys are successful for a reason, and that's a big one, right? So if unless that interior pass rush for the Steelers somehow comes out of hibernation and decides it's going to, not let Joe Burrow work the pocket, then if they could collapse the pocket, I guess that would be the Steelers' path to victory. Also, if they could put up some points against Cincinnati, their defenses, can definitely be had. But I think this is closer to, you know, 30-23 Cincinnati is probably a better way to look at it. It would not surprise me at all to see Justin Fields play a couple series as a spark. Imagine the way the Steelers threw in no huddle when Ben was a quarterback, right? They wouldn't go to it until they kind of needed it. But then they would, maybe have some success with it and go to it again or whatever, or late in the game. It wouldn't surprise me if you saw Justin Fields come in the game in a similar way, like to try to give them a spark if it seems like they're not hanging with the Bengals to start the game. I'm sorry to say that. Like, I hate being on the show every week and predicting the Steelers to lose, because it's like I thought about this, it's like there are definitely we were the first Steelers podcast, and we were definitely the first one that was like fans of the team who in a way are more aware and into it than the press coverage would be even. That's where we started, right? Now there are a lot of Steelers podcasts you can choose to go around and see other things. And I would say that you could definitely find Steelers podcasts that are even, that are more fanny than us. The guys are wearing their jerseys and the whole room is outfitted with gear. And it's like, I'm not that guy. I've been a gigantic fan my entire life, but I don't have a room in my house that's outfitted with Steelers gear, right? And we're definitely not the most like Homerish, but I feel like our show is like we tell the truth here, and I think that's more valuable to me. So I really want to like say thank you to the two of you and to those of you who listen to the show, because this show would be as bad as it is to say pessimistic things about the Steelers for a whole season of the show. It's also crap. It would also be crappy to be here lying about it just to like make you feel good, So, I mean, I guess if they come out and play against the Bengals and look like a brand new team and give us some hope for the playoffs, then maybe that would be the better outcome than expecting them to be dominant in this game and not coming out that way.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I missed your score. What was it?
30-23.
30-23. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm thinking more along that line. I'm thinking like 33-20. I don't think it's that close at the end. I just feel like there's more separation or something. And I think it's more likely that like they miss a extra point or whatever than put up multiple field goals. I just feel like the offense is gonna kind of roll for Cincinnati. Until I see, it's like right now it's like I'm that meme with the stick poking the horse and seeing if it's gonna move or not. Because it's like unfortunately that's kind of
you did? Yeah.
yeah, it's like, are you alive? Are you gonna do anything? And it's like I just don't know if this team has it right now. I know Mike Tomlin, supposedly addressed some issues after the game, but it's like, what can you do on a short week to really change your fortunes with how bad you've been playing? You've been turning the ball over, you're not creating the turnovers you've normally been at. So
But they're on a long week now. They got like half a bye this
oh,
time.
you're right. 5 days is a world of well, I know, I guess you are right. Yeah, because
Thursday,
we're
Friday,
going
Saturday,
Wednesday to
Sunday,
Saturday.
Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's 9.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It
So they
is
spent the
Wednesday
whole
to
time
Saturday.
coaching, coming up with some new ideas on defense.
Good luck with that. Unfortunately. But yeah, I just don't have a good feeling about this team. I feel like we're gonna be that team that, this year teams are gonna be like, oh, they clinched early and then just fell off a rock. It was like, here's the cliff, and they jumped way too early. So I just don't like our chances. 33-20 is my prediction too. Unfortunately. But
Oh man. All
We
that
were
remains is
at the beginning of the season. There was a strong stretch there where we were really talking up the team. Those first couple weeks. Us.
yeah, well, like Will likes to say all the time, reversion to the mean. Unfortunately, except that it's been more applicable to our coaching this year than talent level, because I feel like there's enough talent on this team for it to be good and be better, but we're just not putting it in positions to win.
I feel like we're getting 70% out of our talent, while other teams are getting closer to 95-ish percent. Like it just feels like our guys on offense are just not being put in their best positions.
Let's put it this way. I think there are a lot of limitations to the Steelers' talent on both sides of the football, but I would like to walk away from the game thinking that you could see the lack of talent exposed rather than the fact that they did. We did everything we could, with our scheme and with the plays that we called to try to make it happen, and we just don't have the guys. Because then that gives you optimism, like, all right,
Mhm.
we change some of the guys, we'll make it work. But we can't even get to that point. Like, we're not stressing our talent to the point where it breaks. I mean, maybe a little bit. Like our defensive secondary, I think we found out where our lack of talent is in the defensive secondary. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'd much rather have a team that you felt was really exquisitely coached and like they put players in position and they just can't make the plays. I'd rather that outcome than the other one because we
Yeah.
don't, it could be coaching, could be talent, could be both. And fixing it is a much more complicated thing. Here's a question I'll throw to you two. If the Steelers, and I'm going to say, God forbid, get blown out 5 weeks in a row to end the season, which is a possibility. They lose by double digits, 5 games in a row. Is there any, does ownership have any kind of move towards like we need to make some serious changes in what we're doing? Or do you think it's just going to roll? They're just going to run it back next year and say, well, didn't go our way. And, we got beat up by the end of the year and we didn't have the right protection of the football. And we just execute and don't turn it over. We'll be better next year. Like, what's the answer?
I I, I think the question, like you're kind of looking at like, oh, does Tomlin go anywhere? No, I think Tomlin is locked and loaded for next year. There's no, I think we could get beat by 40 these next 2 games and he'll be here. But if the losses are bad enough, I think the biggest change we could see is one, the quarterback. I think Wilson and Fields could be scrapped. I think they could just do away with the two QBs. And I think Terrell Austin could get canned. I think that's the most we could see, even if we lose by 80 points over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. I I would tend to agree with Corey. Uh, Tomlin is pretty safe. He's got it, as I saw on a Twitter post earlier, he's got more job security than the Pope. Uh, he's not going anywhere until
Yeah.
he's like dead or doesn't want to be here. So,
Supposedly they have, offed the Pope where they, it turned out they didn't like the guy that was the Pope. They're like, yeah, yeah, he died suddenly in his sleep. Don't know what happened. Yeah.
mhm.
So we don't even
but
have that going for us.
but yeah,
Uh,
I'd say the biggest. I honestly, I'm convinced that they're going to run with Russell Wilson next year. There's
Feels like it.
reports.
Or Fields. I think you're going to see either Wilson or Fields next year be the starter. So I would say Wilson, unless he's just so bad at protecting the football the next 2 weeks that they're like, well, we don't need Jameis Winston here. Like that could be. But I go back to your earlier question. I think the biggest thing that could change if that happens, if they have a bad streak like this, is that the control of the team ownership voice could change. Like I could imagine, it's very difficult for me to imagine Mike Tomlin moving on, but I could imagine Art too moving to Danny Rooney. They have
Hmm.
typically come off of some very disappointing seasons when they made the shift in terms of who was running the team.
Okay.
Uh, Dan Rooney came on after 69 or in 69, I think, actually. And Art came in after the oh, I've forgotten now exactly. I think after the 2006 season, I think, or somewhere something like that.
Okay.
So they have kind of made their moves
Hmm.
when they felt like it was time for like a new voice at the top. So I guess there's a possibility that there could be an ownership move. And I feel like Danny Rooney's pretty close to the age. They're both of them. Art's close to the age where he might move on, and Danny Rooney's close to the age where he might move up. But I would think that's a bit of a pipe dream. But I do feel like an ownership
Interesting.
team has yielded some good results in the past.
Interesting. So my answer was going to be I think the only real big difference would be I think Austin could get let go. Um, just because his unit's not performing well, they're not communicating well, they're not really doing anything well at the moment. So, but that's an interesting take, Will, with the potential not change in ownership, but change of
Yeah.
who's running.
By the way, 2017 was the year that so he came on as president of the team, Art Rooney, in 2003. So that
Okay.
was, at a sort of a lower point. And then, but 2017, so it was after the 2016 season and lost to Jacksonville. That's in the first year. That's the year he came in. So,
Okay.
it's not crazy.
Yeah, boy. Who I didn't think we were going to end the show with a potential zinger out there that there might be a little bit of an ownership shift at the top, or at least voice of who's running stuff in ownership. So,
And I do think, the thing about uh, Dan Rooney and Danny Rooney is that they're football guys. They played the game. Danny was a quarterback, so Danny like understands the offensive side of the ball
okay.
better than just like God bless Art grew up with the Steelers, but he was off being a lawyer and getting an MBA. He wasn't involved in day to day. I think Danny has worked in he was a coaching intern. He was a ball boy. He was a coaching intern. He was a worked in analytics and he worked in scouting and he worked in the front office. Like I think he's had a taste of every job in the organization. So I feel like that's a move that will benefit the Steelers when it happens.
How much shakeup do you think he could really like throw into the organization out of just morbid curiosity?
Yeah, they might change the turning. I don't know if they're going to change the turning radius of the oil tanker, but they might change course a little bit, but it takes a long
Okay.
time.
All right.
But I've
Give
heard he's a lot more aggressive in his thinking.
Okay.
Just as around the Hula Bowl last year, is that he's kind of Ike Taylor told me that actually. He said he's a lot more forward thinking than the guys at the top. Um, I will add on, it nothing big would happen unless he's anti Tomlin. And so that's kind of the main thing that you'd have to keep an eye on, which I didn't hear anything about. Obviously, Ike wouldn't say anything about that. But until Tomlin is displaced, at least as head coach, even if he takes like a job as like assistant GM or whatever, we're not going to see anything major that's really tangible. And I think we all agreed on that.
Well, and I think that something bad could happen, which is that we're not even discussing in this, is that we could lose Weidel. I think that's a not a impossible thing that he would get hired as the GM of another team and be willing to leave the Steelers, even though it feels like he has a lot of input and control, and he's in a pretty good situation here in Pittsburgh. It does feel like if the right opportunity came to him to be a GM, that he might, imagine you could go to the Giants and be able to hire Ben Johnson as your head coach and get a quarterback that you like and start new. I mean, build a team from scratch. Really, I mean
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty great thing if you're a GM. That's a good situation to be in. So, at any
And
rate,
a lot of GMs would have been fired by now if they're with the Giants, and Bean's still hanging in there, or not Bean, the other Buffalo dude. Is it what's his name? Not
Dayball.
McDermott. That's the coach. The Giants GM.
Joe
oh shit,
Shea.
I think he's gone.
Yeah. No, well,
I mean, I think he will be gone. I don't think he can live the whole thing with Barkley, especially if Barkley breaks their record against the Giants this weekend. He might not make it through the game with a job. I don't think.
So I actually heard a very diabolical take from Adam Schefter on this, on Saquon breaking the record. Would you rather Saquon break the record against the Giants or somehow allow the Giants to win and screw themselves completely out of getting their quarterback of the future?
Why do we have to choose? If you're
Right.
the Saquon, we're gonna ask you, can you run out at the 1 yard line whenever you have a 99-yard run? Like just step out of bounds just before the goal line.
Right.
well, that's one of those things to think about, though. Is like guys like Drew Lock. You know, the team wants to lose, but Drew Lock's playing for his career, and that's why, like, a guy like even Kyle Allen or like a young dude playing, it's like those dudes, they're still gonna be around. But Drew Lock,
Same with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz
Yeah.
is not going to get that much chance, and it's like if he's playing in a friendly system there, maybe he can primp himself up a little bit for a job in the future. So it's like you can imagine if Carson Wentz looks terrible this weekend, that might not be long for him in the league. So yeah, it's definitely a factor to take into account that we don't always account for, which is even when it's not in the team's best interest to win, the players who are out there, I think, are playing hard and they would like to win. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode here at the SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Kohlman. You know me as Smith, smoking on the message boards, joined by Korey Karbowsky, you know him as Corey39, and Wil Masisak, you know him as Bradshaw to Ben. Gentlemen, hopefully we get to, wave our yellow flags this week and eke out a win. I know it. We, like right now, we're the doom and gloom podcast when it comes to the Steelers stuff, but who knows? Maybe they surprise us and we get back to playing a little bit more like Steeler football. So, with that being said, here we go, Steelers.
Go get the Steelers and Happy New Year, everybody.
Yep. Happy New Year.